Rest in peace to Bob Uecker. If you were of a certain era time period, you would know him, I guess, as Mr. Baseball. I remember all the jokes made about him because he didn't have that length of a Major League Baseball career, but his voice loaned himself to the Milwaukee Brewers, and he was a scout. And of course, later he did acting, but it was the Miller Lite beer commercials, especially in the 80s. I must be in the front row. And then they'd have him like way up in the stands. He was one of those personalities that got bigger, though his career wasn't that memorable. It's kind of like Dick Vitale, who was, his announcing got him bigger than his actual career. There are athletes, which you see a lot of times, and I'm just going to keep it 100. When I be dogging some of these turkeys who be on ESP, heads on sticks on ESPN, some of these cats that were third, fourth tier, and they parlayed into a career where they blow up because they people assumed that their careers were like that when it really wasn't. He was one of those kind of people. He got, or you can win, but you get on TV and something happens and then you transform into a larger than life figure, a la John Madden. So I've seen it happen where personnel just gets even bigger. It's just like it goes from one extreme, then they become larger than they were. So he's a glad example of it. Bob Uecker was a good example of it. He was 90 years old. Colorful personality, was catchy. And again, he parlayed his career into something. He did some acting. He had some roles. He had a distinctive voice. But it was always those punchlines, and he was on the Johnny Carson show a lot, which definitely would help your cause back in the day. People don't understand, unless you cross around from a certain era and you remember, being on the Tonight Show with Carson was like the end-all, be-all, because there was no social media. There was only so many channels. There was such limitation. So if you could get on Carson's, you had made it. And Uecker had definitely made it. He just had a type of personality that was going to be persistent, but it wasn't going to be too annoying. But those commercials they could be cringy, comical, they could be corny, but they worked for that era. It worked. And there's always somebody that you'll say, was he really that famous? Were they really that good? Was they like that? Because there's going to be somebody who's going to take Tony Romo, for instance, who was a good quarterback, but he's a better analyst, better analysis. And that's the reality. Sometimes you see a guy, if they catch a role, like Terry Bradshaw was a good quarterback, better commentator, and a bigger what I call post career when you can figure in